Have you ever started a trial as a survivor, quietly sneaking your way into the nearest generator with hope in your heart that the killer won't immediately spot you? You spot the perfect generator to start on, slowly making your way towards it. It's perfect. Tall grass surrounding the area, trees and bushes hiding you from sight across the map. You take your first steps into the tall grass, only to be caught in a bear trap hidden in the grass. Your heart stutters in fear as you frantically try to free yourself. The thudding in your ear becomes louder when you realize it's actually the killer's terror radius becoming louder and louder in your headphones. Quickly looking around, you spot a tall, imposing monster of a man, with angry eyes behind a smiling mask, watching you as he quickly approaches. This is true fear. You have stepped in his trap, and now he will make sure you die. What is his name? The Trapper. The Trapper is the poster child for Dead by Daylight. His design is inspired from Jason Voorhees in the Friday the 13th franchise, which explains why, after 6 years since the game's release, no matter how many times fans have begged for Jason to be released as a new killer, Dead by Daylight basically told us it will never happen. Before the great and powerful entity snatched the Trapper away into the fog, he was known as Evan MacMillian, the son of Archie Mcmillan, a wealthy man who ran his estate and mining company with an iron fist. He was a cruel, angry man who used Evan's willingness to do anything for his father to his advantage. Even as Archie's mental health declined, Evan loyally followed his father, becoming his enforcer, and finally, when his father's mind fully snapped, killing an untold amount of people, among them 100 of the miners working for his father. After the rampage of a now murderous Evan, he was eventually taken by the entity as his own enforcer in the fog, taking on the new name, the Trapper. His father was later found mysteriously dead in the basement of his estate. Now that we know a bit about the killer behind the smiling mask, let's dive into how the Trapper works. The Trapper is considered an easy difficulty killer based on how many hours required for normal players to fully learn how to use his power effectively. The Trapper's weapon is called the Cleaver, a long weapon stained with the blood of his victims that he uses to hack survivors into the dying state. The Trapper must hit survivors twice with the Cleaver before the survivor becomes downed. His power is the bear traps, large foothold traps made by steel that lay around the map at the start of a trial, waiting to be picked up and set. Trapper starts with one bear trap at the start of a trial and has 5 other traps laying around the map to pick up and use at his leisure. Setting traps requires you to press and hold the power button. Once the trap is active, if a survivor steps into the trap, it immobilizes them until they release themselves or the Trapper downs or picks them up in the trap. If the survivor steps into the trap healthy, they will be put into the injured state. However, a survivor can disarm a trap set by you, so be careful when setting traps. Trapper has many add-ons to help players during a trial. There are add-ons that darken his traps to make them harder to see for a survivor, like Longwood Dye and Tar Bottle. There are also add-ons that allow the Trapper to carry more than one trap at a time, like Trapper Bag and Stitched Bag. There are add-ons that allow for faster setup time to place traps, like trapping setters and fastening tools, along with a few nastier add-ons like Honing Stone, where if a survivor frees themselves from these traps, they are inflicted with the dying state, or Bloody Coil, which inflicts a healthy survivor into the injured state if they disarm a trap. The Trapper has 3 specific perks that start in his blood web. Each of his 3 perks can become unlocked and available in other killers' blood webs after the Trapper reaches a certain rank. Each perk has 3 tiers to fully level to get to the highest rating of the perk. The first perk is called Unnerving Presence. Unnerving Presence instills great fear into survivors. All survivors that are healing or repairing in your terror radius have their trigger odds increased by 10%, and their skill check success zones are reduced to 40% at Tier 1, 50% for Tier 2, and 60% for Tier 3. At level 30, this perk becomes teachable. His second perk is Brutal Strength, which allows you to break pallets, breakable walls, and generators faster. 10% faster for Tier 1, 15% faster for Tier 2, and 20% faster for Tier 3. At rank 35, this perk becomes teachable. His last perk is called Agitation, which gives you increased movement speed and increases your tear radius by 12 meters while you are carrying a survivor. At rank 40, this perk becomes teachable. The Trapper has one big advantage, the element of surprise. Activating traps where survivors will not be expecting them. When you start out a game, you have a few precious seconds to trap a few areas that you feel might help you in a chase. When you start out a game, you have a few precious seconds to trap a few areas that you feel might help you in a chase. Use that time to your advantage. Take in the map you are on and then visualize where a survivor would most likely go and trap that area. Some very good spots are windows or vault locations. Place them under windows or next to down pallets so the survivor will unknowingly fall into these traps while in a chase with you. Make sure when placing traps to look around you, as survivors, especially higher rank survivors, will watch and wait for you to set a trap and immediately deactivate it, smothering your pressure. Place traps around areas that survivors will not be expecting. Have you found a patch of tall grass in a random dead zone? Trap it. Found an area survivors can drop from a tall height? Trap it. Found a corner where you think survivors will run around quickly? Trap it. Think outside the box. Remember where survivors have ran you and remember their route. Trap an unsuspecting area near there and see if it works for you. Outside of the very important part of where to place traps is when to place traps. The first opportunity to place traps is right at the start of a trial. Place around 2 to 3 traps and then find your first survivor. A second opportunity is to place a trap around an area where you down a survivor before picking them up. Do not place traps during mid-game when survivors are steadily working on gens. Place a few traps here and there, but keep up the pressure. Keep gen control. With that comes some tips and tricks when using Trapper. While Trapper can use the map to his advantage if his traps are placed in the right area, putting pressure on multiple parts of the map, he is also quite strong when it comes to looping. He can completely shut down a loop with traps. He has the ability to limit how well survivors can loop what was considered a strong area for them, causing the survivor to make a choice: run to another area or work with what they have. Placing a trap on a window or near a pallet in a jungle gym or an LT wall before a chase starts can be the deciding factor in a short chase versus a long drawn-out chase. Steer survivors near your traps. Make them go where you want. This is easier in tight, controlled areas, but can still work outside in larger sections of a map. Take the opportunity when chasing a survivor around a loop to use the traps to your advantage. If you know you won't make it to a survivor before they throw a pallet down, avoid the stun by activating a trap right next to the pallet. Now, not only did you avoid the stun, but you got them to throw the pallet. Decide whether or not to leave the pallet down and place a trap on one side or get rid of it. Want to add extra pressure to a team? If there is a sneaky area like a patch of grass or a sharp corner that survivors could possibly take to save their hook survivor teammate, place a trap there. You could get lucky. Be careful when setting traps around corners or around pallets. If your trap is too far to one side, survivors can adjust their character to maneuver around the trap. You won't be able to easily follow them as your character model is a lot bigger than survivors. Be aware that survivors can also avoid your traps if they are in the injured state and use a perk called Dead Hard. Dead Hard will allow them to lunge across your trap without being caught in it. As with all killers, time management is key. Finding the sweet spot between pressuring survivors from gens while also keeping survivors on their toes across the map while they wonder if you have set up any unsuspecting traps. He is an easy killer to learn in my opinion, and once you find your playstyle with him, he is a very fun killer to master. Do not be discouraged when learning him. Dead by Daylight is very funny with how they do their matchmaking. If you get a game with survivors that wipe the floor with you, learn from what they did and apply it to your next game. If you have any other questions, please let me know in the comments below and I will be happy to answer them. Now go out there and show these nasty survivors why they shouldn't mess with your Trapper. You got this, you noob.